Sound is working today. So I've done some
Here we go.
shenanigans.
Let's
Yes,
see
it
if it's
is.
working.
Let's see if
Okay.
the sound is working today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglash for the WDMA. There's my Dilbert dolls over there. And we're going to be talking about personalization today and B2B versus B2C segmentation. But before we do, I want to just talk about a book I read yesterday. It's a very, very quick read, and it's by David Baer and Kendall Cook. He goes by Ken, okay, mostly. But anyway, it's called Start with Strategy, and I marked it all up as usual, right? Because it's a PDF and it's available free, and I'll put the link in the comments below. Um, and if you're trying to run an ad agency or trying to work with clients, um, at almost any level, it's really a good read. Um, I sent it to my style consultant yesterday and said, "You really need to read this. I wish I would have had this 30 or 40 years ago when I started as a consultant because it not only does it illustrate the problems that we have with marketing in general, where almost every article you read, almost every pitch you hear is for the next shiny object and the next thing that's going to be a silver bullet and revolutionize your company. And this book really not it doesn't just say listen to your customer first or listen to your client first. It explains the questions you should ask, and it really it gives you tracks to run on. And I highly recommend it. And I'm in a round table or I guess it's a networking group, but a lot of times it's the same people. So I cause trouble in there. David says I'm a contrarian, I think he says. Although too often I agree with him, so I'm not that contrary, I guess. Um, so I just wanted to put a plug in for that book, and I don't know if I should put it in the show notes. I guess I'll ask him if he wants it there. I can, but I'll put a link to it anyway. Okay, so I was looking up uh, RFM articles that mention RFM, and when I first searched, nothing came up, and that was partly because I searched for one day. In the most recent day, there were no RFM articles that I could find. But in the last week, I found several. So I brought this one up that was written actually by LinkedIn Marketing. It said, but at the bottom it said this was generated by AI. Is it helpful? And that was kind of a spoiler alert. Once I'd read that, and I said absolutely not. And then they asked me why, and I'll show you why. And I found this to be a consistent tell in AI generated content. How do you segment and target B2B customers versus B2C customers? There's three phrases in there: segment and target, B2B customers, B2C customers. It's repeated over and over. Segment targeting, business to business or consumer, segment and target customers versus B2B, B2C customers, B2B versus B2B segmentation, B2B segmentation, B2C segmentation, B2B segmentation. If I were to write an article like this, I would never repeat the same words, 12, 14 times in one paragraph, much less one sentence. Okay. There was a time before everybody was doing modeling, automated modeling, poorly. I might have been the most prolific business to business machine learning modeler in the world, probably likely, because I'd given speeches about how it wouldn't be possible. I'd given speeches about how cluster analysis of business to business wouldn't be possible. I'd said in national forums that demographics wouldn't apply to business, and that's the way this starts out, right on the same page with me. And I stuck with that until I didn't. Okay, why? Well, I was working with the Mutual Group, which is one of the biggest health insurance companies in Canada, And they also had a U.S. division, and a friend of mine was president, and he kind of said, could you take a look at our company? I had worked for him when he was president of Blue Cross Blue Shield Wisconsin. I had done a lot of work for other Blue Crosses around the country, and mostly their sales was, they were selling to business. Okay, they were selling health insurance packages to businesses for their employees. Okay, and so that's what I did. But for the mutual group, we actually did some modeling, and Debbie, one of the managers there, said, "Have you ever tried throwing in demographics into a model, a business to business model?" And I said, "No, I just don't believe it's possible." And she said, "Well, what? Don't you have them?" I said, "Oh yeah, we got a couple of hundred." She said, "Well, why don't you just tag them on there and see what happens?" I said, "Good point. There's no downside to it. It costs us nothing." And so we did that, and we threw them in the model, and guess what we found? We found that businesses of a feather flock together, that demographics apply maybe more to business than they do to consumer. And there's a big, big reason for that. There's two kinds of businesses, if you want to segment. This is probably more valuable than this entire article. There's two kinds of businesses. One kind of business is dependent on their local market. Okay, it's not a surprise if you like to go to different kinds of restaurants, for example, that the hoity-toity restaurants. We have a couple of hoity-toity restaurants in my little town, which used to be out in the country, but now it's kind of fringe suburban. Mac mansions are going up everywhere. And we have these very, very fancy steakhouses and all kinds of cuisine. We have a couple of Chinese restaurants, but a lot of different restaurants in my little town. It's mostly a restaurant town. And, and I've also gone, I did work for a guy who had a barbecue. I don't remember how I met him. I think it was through CBMC. But anyway, he called up and he said, "Could you help me with my marketing?" So I said, "Well, you got to take me to lunch." And he said, "Oh yeah, I've got a great place for lunch." He took me to this barbecue place in what I would consider the inner city of Milwaukee. I didn't grow up in Milwaukee, so I don't know hardly one neighborhood from another. But I was the only white guy in there, and great barbecue, just super great barbecue. I loved it, and we helped him out. We gave him some ideas. But the restaurants are tied quite a bit to their local community, right? They have to have repeat business from their local community, and word gets around, and so the you can tell the demographic, you can tell the market they're after, and that doesn't mean there can't be variation within a town or a geography, but there is definitely differences, right? The gas stations, some of the gas stations I go to have bulletproof glass. You shove the money or whatever, and some of them don't. And so local geography does determine things about a business, right? The other kind of business, second kind of business, is a business that can be anywhere it wants. I remember going out to Land's End when it was, pretty long time ago, probably the 80s still, and worked on some projects with them out there in Dodgeville. And it was cornfields, pretty much cornfields and cattle all the way out to Dodgeville. And you came over a hill and there was cornfields on the left, and Land's End was out on the right, essentially in a cornfield. And why is Land's End there? Why isn't it in a metro area? Well, because Gary Comer liked Dodgeville. I mean, I went to its original store on Milwaukee Avenue down in Chicago. And, that's, I think, where Gary was from. But he liked vacationing up in Wisconsin. And so he decided that, there were solid, hardworking people in Wisconsin. They had a neutral accent. We think we do, but of course we don't. And a somewhat seasonal business. Land's End's fourth quarter is usually one of their best. And so a lot of the farm wives, would love to do some part-time phone work, on the phone, or staff the warehouse or something like that. And so he had a good workforce, well educated, but friendly, super friendly. And so he put his business there. And a lot of catalog companies are out in the country. You know, Newski's is, I don't know. Where is Newski's? It's up in northern Wisconsin. I keep meaning to go visit. But a lot of them are in, you know, Dana at Plow and Hearth, you know, laments that he's in the middle of nowhere and it's hard to attract really top-notch marketing people to that kind of area. And so he's done a lot more hybrid work scheduling and that sort of thing. We talk about that. We talk about that with a lot of catalogers, and Newski's was in there too. And they, you know, they said that they've done they've had a lot of creativity around hiring because they're in the middle of nowhere. Colony, you know, Monroe, Wisconsin, you know, it's a great place. Silver Star is in Oshkosh or Appleton, I guess. I've been up there a couple of times. Is it Oshkosh or Appleton? I don't know. It's up there, northeast Wisconsin. And so, but then you think about it, and you know, when I went to White Plains, IBM was there, Coca-Cola was there, a lot of big corporate headquarters were there. Same thing with like Plano, Texas. A lot of a lot of corporate headquarters were there. Why? Well, because they're where the owner wants them to be, right? And guess what? The schools matter, the demographics matter, the access to travel, it matters, other amenities matter. And so both cases where they're locally geographically linked or they're not, the demographics matter. So think about that. And they work in modeling. So if you're doing modeling, throw the demographics in the B2B, contrary to this article. But I think I've just given you way more value than this article had. It just goes on and on and on about the tried and true myths in this, and it's just a horrible article. AI generated. Thank you. I'm glad they told me. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about, I did a little survey asking how many impressions you get, and a third were less than 300 on average, and 60% were 300 to 1,000. I get usually around 400, and sometimes, well, this one interestingly pulled 1,300 impressions. 1,300, oh, it won't highlight, that's right. Which is a lot, and it was over 1,000 in one or 2 days. It just went right up. There was one respondent who had only got 10 responses, but we got 1,000 impressions, which says to me that impressions are fairly meaningless to look at. So I'm going to do another survey and ask if you think impressions matter at all, because I have a hard time finding out. There doesn't seem to be a strong correlation between the number of comments or whether there's an image or whether there isn't. I'm frankly dumbfounded by the images. But anyway, I wrote to Brian Gullad and I said, hey, could you enter my poll? And so he checked 10,000 plus. And then I said, well, I was hoping you would chime in a little bit. And so he sent me his his recent views, and I don't know why he gets to see views and I only get to see impressions. Maybe he's a blue check or something. But his views in the last 90 days, his views are 97 million. You know, I remember when I was trying to catch up with Brian in the number of followers, he really encouraged me, and he's been trying to help me with appreciating my own value to the world. So I have nothing but positive, great things to say. Brian tirelessly helps everybody he can. Look at this number of likes, 500,000 likes in the last 90 days. So that gives you something to shoot for. He ruined my stats on my survey. But I'll be doing another survey because they get so darn many impressions. Okay, and here's another questionable article. I would say, and it asks, how can you best do personalization? And I actually looked up the definition of personalization in American Heritage Dictionary, and it says to render personal rather than impersonal or purely professional. To make or alter so as to meet individual needs, inclinations, or specifications, and to have printed, engraved, or monogrammed with one's initials. Okay, and so that's the definition up there. I had to do that because I couldn't make a bit of sense out of this. But it's the typical marketing tripe. You know, personalization is now the buzzword that everyone has to use. Personalized marketing campaigns have become essential for today's businesses to attract and retain customers. Some of this is based on a survey that said that customers agreed that they were more interested in an ad that was relevant to their needs than an ad that wasn't. It's like, if I've ever heard of a tautological truth, that's one. Gee, you look older than yesterday today. Yes, I am. It's like, of course, if I'm not interested in an ad, it's less interesting to me, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to know what I'm interested in, or even that I'm going to know what I'm interested in. And I've been bounding on this. There's a couple of great articles in the archives about how impossible personalization is. It says however, truly personalizing a campaign in an efficient way. What do you mean an efficient way? I think of personalized as talking with you, you know, on the phone, maybe Zoom, maybe in person over coffee. That's probably the most personal interaction you get, talking over a meal, right? Everything else is less and less and less. Chat on LinkedIn, less, right? Messages, email, personally handwritten notes, maybe more. You know, there's a spectrum in there. But I don't think, you know, the old definition of marketing is like find a parade and run to the front. I mean, I've defined marketing as a group of people you can essentially say the same thing to and be somewhat, you know, relevant. I think that's a fair definition, and I think that's efficient if you think about it that way. No one seems to want to. Everyone seems to want one-to-one. So marketers must find a way to tailor their campaigns to each individual's unique needs and preferences. You can ask them what they are, but you can't do it at scale, not very well. Plus, people don't know. Focus groups are rife with stories of people telling you lies. We tell ourselves lies. You know, I'm thinking about a new car. What'll it be? No idea. Well, I got some ideas. When will it be? No idea. Okay. Anyway, I don't know my needs. And so artificial intelligence is going to fix that fast and at scale. And I understand leveraging variables such as city, title, city, company name, and other details to vary your copy from one version to the next. Is that personal? Not in my book. Okay. Timing, is that personal? No. Host voicing your ads? That's totally mass media. That was one of the first types of commercials on radio. You know, the show radio drama would pause, and one of the key actors would read your commercial. I think it was even banned for children's ads or something like that back in the 30s. Keep as many details as possible in their CRM. Now, I can tell you that with all of the details I know about me, I still can't predict me. Sorry, I can't. You know, I've had a couple of things I've been meaning to buy for a couple of weeks in my thing. I'll probably buy something today that is completely news to me. Okay? Remember your goal. I don't know how a goal translates into individualized personalization. Taking more time to personalize campaigns. We'll use this one. This is a good one because this is from my friend Mike Gunderson, and I teased him a little bit yesterday because I was on the LinkedIn phone app, and up came a huge QR code, and it was from Mike. It was like, click this QR code. How do I click a QR code on a phone? I don't think there's a way. There ought to be a way, but there doesn't seem to be. You have to be off your phone to use your phone to click the QR code. So how do you do that? Well, you include a URL, a hot link in your message along with your QR code. Always put both. So if I'm on my phone, I can just tap that. away we go. But anyway, so I teased him about that yesterday, and I haven't heard back from him. I hope you're not upset, Mike. I didn't mean to. I just was trying to help in a probably crude and inappropriate way. So dynamic content allows you to personalize the message and imagery in your direct mail piece, and we talked about that yesterday. But be careful what you do. We try to, if you're marketing to women with children, show a family. It makes sense, right? If you're marketing to single women, show single women. If you're marketing to old men, show old men, or whatever, or retired couples, show older couples. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. What annoys me is now I get marketing materials that have no connection with me at all. And when they could be, at least at this minimal level, personalized. Okay, and so Mike points out that if you're doing digital presses and doing setup with versioning, that you can do some of that. Although be careful, because in a careful study of gender tags on individuals, they found that it was only 50% accurate, which means it was basically a coin flip. You would have been just as, and sometimes that's better. Sometimes, if you don't know, if you really know that you don't know the gender, if you're renting a list and you don't know, then don't pound on it, right? Make it generic enough that, use the they pronoun instead of the he or she. Simple, something simple like that. Okay, there's a ton of approaches, and it's all marked up, and for heaven's sakes, it doesn't give you any clues. And I understand this is a 20-point article that attempts to do too much, like I am right now, and going too long. And so I feel for the people that contributed, because they just didn't have enough time to explain any of it. But the theme that's recurrent is that personalization is essential and it must be done at scale, which means it's not personal at all. It's a fraud. Okay, so let's drop this word personalization, because it's a fraud. If you want to say, segmentation, maybe that. But I'll tell you what, I've been surveying printers for the last 40 years and asking them, how many people use your Selectronic bindery, use your demo bind, use your capabilities for turn of the drum personalization? How many of your clients use it well? And it's never been higher than 10%, and it still isn't. Okay, and I reaffirmed that just a couple of weeks ago. So segmentation is extremely difficult. Be very, very careful. It's easy to be creepy and offend your audience, and it's not easy to impress them with how you've guessed the thing that they were just deciding to buy, and you're right there at the moment they were buying it, which is the lie of the internet, the lie of real-time marketing. I don't know what hyper-personalization is. Some people weren't content to use personalization, which just shows you that all of this article is hype, and really, really, our marketing world is awful, which is the point of start with strategy. Have a great day. Like and share. I hope you enjoyed it. Play it at double speed, and it will only take a little more than 10 minutes of your day. Bye-bye.